Hello and welcome to the Voice of TOD. I'm Tom, and with this video we're going to talk about my favourite TV show of all time, Firefly. In this episode we're going to talk about Out of Gas, which is episode 8 in the series, and we're going to continue on with a new episode or a new video each Wednesday until we get to Serenity, the film that rounded out the main story set up here. These reviews will be filled with spoilers, as you've probably guessed by now. So if you haven't seen Firefly, while I personally vouch for it, I think you should go and watch it right now. It is also on Star, or whatever they call the Disney Plus thing. They added that recently. So people's access to it is probably much easier now. What I say shouldn't really hold a lot of weight with you, to be fair. So anyway, I'm happy to wait. Go check it out. It's good. But with that, let's talk about Out of Gas. We're going to take a look at what our heroes are up to and some of my favourite moments from the episode. I promise I'm not crying. You are. I'm not now, but you know what I mean. This episode is, well, it's basically the obligatory of the time flashback episode, but it's done in a different way. With a lot of flashback episodes, they really piss me off. But here it's very much focused on Mal, and we're flashing back to certain points in time, either near future, which is about 6 hours or so before the opening scene, and the far past, we'll call it, which is where Mal is meeting the crew and enlisting their services or whatever. But the present and the main timeline of this episode is Mal dealing with the situation following the first scene, which we will get into. Normally, as I said, I don't like flashback episodes, but this one is done so well. The story is very tight. Obviously, the acting is great because we have 9 characters who, if you haven't fallen in love with them by episode 8, I don't know why you're still watching, to be honest. That's a joke. But you see my point. But it's very fluid. Yes, it jumps around a little bit all over the place with different time zones, but it makes sense, and that's because not only is the story very good, but the editing in this episode is so good. Can't praise it enough. And the way that they use certain shots to connect the different time periods, so good. But this is probably going to be a bit of a long one. Last week we looked at the themes more than the episode. This week we're solely looking at the episode because there's a lot I want to talk about. So strap in and let's go straight into the opening scene. An empty Serenity with stirring strings in the background setting the somber tone. Music in this show, something I've not touched on yet, is very good. I do love the folky edge to most of it, but in this episode it's wow, it's just another level. This is such a, to my eye anyway, and that's not trained in any real filmmaking structure, but this is a very arty episode with how everything just works and fits, and love it, absolutely love it. But Mal collapses onto the deck of the cargo bay. We get a flashback to first one of the episode, to there's quite a few, but to Mal and Zoe with a voiceover of, sounds like a salesman, telling Mal, a ship like this will be with you till the day you die. Very fitting for this episode. Mal is showing Zoe this Firefly class ship that he's just bought. Zoe isn't really into it. Great scene, and it really sets up 2 different things. One, this is both of them fresh from, or relatively fresh from, the loss at Serenity Valley. The Independents have broken up, they've probably scattered into the wind. You get the idea that the Alliance is after them. And Mal is very full of hope. He's eager to be free. He wants to be away from the Alliance and in the stars, find like-minded people to spend his time with and do jobs. Zoe will just follow her captain. She doesn't really have any place to go at this point. And I think really both of them just want a home. So that little flashback gives you so much. I mean, I've spent a lot of time watching these episodes, so I might be picking up on things that I've thought about. And as I've said in these reviews before, I have seen the show many times. Why it's my favourite. But, you know, from a new perspective, you might not be picking up on all of this, but from my perspective, so much in these flashbacks. There is so much packed in. But then we jump to the near past. Just about 6 hours, let's say, roughly before the opening scene. When we have a family meal. If you've seen my other reviews, you'll know that I love these scenes. I always sing their praises because they're always so wholesome. But it's Simon's birthday, and there's protein cake with fake chocolate frosting. Doesn't sound good, but I suppose when you live on scraps, it's probably pretty tasty. It doesn't look like much, but hey, it's a birthday cake. And then the engine cuts out, and a fireball runs through the ship. Kaylee, who, following the engine cutting out, is on her way to the engine room, is thrown out the way by Zoe, who takes the full brunt of the force, and is out for the count. Mal and Jane spring into action, being the only two calm enough to see things as they are. We know Mal is cool under pressure, but this is new from Jane. A different take, especially after last week's more humorous JaynesTown. This is a different Jane. Another thing that I like about this episode is that we really get to see more Wash. He's always been sort of in there, but he's about, at this point, a background character. We're starting to get into the point where we explore Wash a little bit more, and he's not the main focus in this, Mal is. But he has some great moments, especially when him and Mal are at it. And with Zoe down, Wash doesn't want to leave her side, which is understandable. It's his wife, they love each other very, very dearly. But after Mal calmly talks to Kaylee, and he uses his captainy ways to know how to get certain people to do certain things for him, Kaylee heads to the engine room to find out what the problem is, but he has to order Wash to the bridge. Wash does it, but he's not happy about it. Which is the first of a few scenes where they're at each other. Really good. I love these guys so much. Everything that they've done together is great, and we're really starting to see that relationship here. But that leads us into flashback 2 of Mal and Zoe hiring Wash and his moustache. I'm not going to go super detail. I mean, I probably am, because you know I ramble on about these videos. But basically, this is the first time that we see Wash, and he is a little bit of a wide boy. He's got loads of recommendations. He's apparently a much sought after, and as we all know, an experienced pilot. But there's something about him that Zoe doesn't like. He bothers her. Just great. We know where that goes, their relationship, their happy marriage. They're probably the most loving couple you'll ever see on a TV series. In my mind, anyway. We also get to meet the ship's mechanic, or genius mechanic, called Bester. Again, I praised the editing at the start. I'm probably going to do that a few times as well. But we get into another great edit of Zoe unconscious in the med bay, and she's crashing. Simon gives her an adreno shot. We cut to Mal doing the same thing to himself, but in the present. The starkness of the two scenes. You've got a brightly lit med bay with loads of people rushing around trying to keep Zoe fighting, I guess. Cut to Mal, alone, dark room, administering the shot himself. So well done. We also have a little moment again just after the cutting back into the near past with Inara and Simon. And we're starting to feel the desperation of the situation. Inara reveals that she's loved Serenity ever since she laid eyes on it. and we cut to Buck, alone in his quarters reading his Bible for comfort. River appears in the doorway and gets a bit river creepy. You know what I mean. And again, it's a little moment between the two characters. We don't really have much more of them in this episode, but their connection over the last few episodes is starting to just grow a little bit, and they're interacting a little bit more. We then get more of Wash and Mal arguing. Wash isn't a soldier, he's just a pilot. He isn't used to being ordered around by anyone, let alone Mal. His clear focus is on Zoe, and rightly so. But we learn that the distress beacon has been launched, but with the course that they were on, they were going to keep out of everybody's way. But Mal gets Wash to focus, comes up with an idea of how to extend the signal. It sounds like with some unorthodox changes and tweaks, but it just made me laugh how Jane steps into the bridge while the two of them are at it. Jane's the voice of reason. Calm, collected, and saying it how it is. That's not the Jane we saw last week. Another flashback, and this time it's with Bester in the engine room. He's screwing a young girl. As you'd expect, he's a young mechanic. Apparently engines make her hot. Can you see where this one's going? Mal interrupts and wants to know why Bester hasn't fixed the ship yet. Turns out he's a really rubbish mechanic. Luckily, Kaylee saw the problem when she was on her back, and after fixing it within 30 seconds, Mal gives her a job right there and then. Little moments like these that really make this episode, and they expand on that connection that we have with the characters as viewers. It's so well written, and it just plays into each individual character in these moments. But this leads us into Kaylee showing Mal that the catalyzer on the engine is done. Sometimes a thing gets broke, can't be fixed. Ain't that the truth? We cut to Mal with the new catalyzer in his hand, but he drops it before he can install it in the engine. He's in pretty rough shape here. Cut to the near past, and everyone is gathered around. They're wrapped up in the cold. I never really saw this show as very science fact, but there are elements that are used, the low oxygen, the cold, all these little things are brought up. It's fantasy, but it does have little elements that hold true and ground it in our world. But it's time to abandon ship. Forward to a shuttle. Mal stays behind. The beacon will work, and he won't abandon Serenity. He's already lost in Serenity once. He won't do it again, even if it means his life. This episode shows the dedication that Mal has to this life that he's chosen, his stubbornness, and ultimately that he will go out on his own terms. Even if it just seems stupid to stay, this is his home, and he'll go down with the ship. He just wants to live his life. Or die with what he has. Wash heads off to do the rigged recall button to call the shuttles back if the ship is fixed. And Mal leads Inara to her shuttle to make sure that it's ready. He's very protective of her. We know that they have that connection, despite him being apparently terrible with shuttles and flying. So Inara does it all anyway, but he just wants to make sure that it's right and that she will be okay. This time we get the Inara flashback, with Mal showing her around the shuttle for the first time. It's a bit of a mess, but she can make it her own. Again, the two of them together, different to Mal and Wash, but Mal and Inara have great chemistry. And the writing helps with that, but the two actors are just so good. They've always had great interplay. And Inara is a smart cookie, even at whatever point in time this is. And she plays Mal, a little bit, but she plays Mal to get what she wants. And we sort of know how that ends, don't we? Especially after the kiss in Our Mrs. Reynolds. Now, I know that I sing the praises of these two characters, and everybody connects with different characters in different ways. Mal is, as I'm sure I've mentioned before, my favourite character in everything that I love and enjoy. Mal is my hero of heroes. I just connect with the guy. But the scene with him and Inara right at the end really got me good. Inara says to Mal, you don't have to die alone. The response, everybody dies alone. It's heartbreaking. I mean, it's true. But it's heartbreaking. Especially with it being the two of them. I mentioned Jane's shift in the episode earlier, and now we get to see how focused he is. Everything's ready for the shuttles to depart. He talks Mal through closing the doors. He's prepped an evac suit for Mal to give him some extra oxygen. Not that Mal would use it, but it's unusually thoughtful of Jane. He's covered every option. He wants everything to be okay. He has this connection to Mal. It's very rare that we see it, but there's an understanding between the two of them. We really get to see Jane growing over these last few episodes, and he clearly has that respect for his captain. This episode really hones in on that and the family aspect of the crew here. Flashbacks lead into that quite a lot, but the story has always been about them. They're the focus here, and it really works so well. Been pretty deep on this episode. We're already 17 minutes in, so I'll speed up a little bit. The shuttles depart, and eventually a salvage crew shows up. They have the part that Mal needs. The catalyzer is a pretty common part until you don't have one, and a deal is made. They board the ship. They're as you'd expect in a world full of pirates and vagabonds and smugglers. And Mal takes a bullet, hence the bleeding throughout the episode. Mal finds a gun, pulls it on them, and the slavers depart, leaving the catalyzer, but they head off. The ship flies away, but probably just out of sight to wait for Mal to die so they can take the ship back. There's salvage on Serenity, and even if this simple part isn't on, it can easily be fixed and sold. While this exchange happened, we had another flashback, and this time it's Mal and Zoe being held up by Marco, a bandit who they clearly made a deal with, and Jane and a third man. Deal's gone sour. Marco and Jane, they're pretty dumb. Great scene. And it shows how far Jane has come, as Mal easily talks him into shooting his old boss and joins the crew. It's very Jane. That kind of lack of loyalty. No honour among thieves. That's Jane. We've seen in this episode he's changed, but boy does it feel like Jane. Anyway, with part in hand, Mal manages to fix the engine and Serenity's flying again. But as he gets to the bridge, he collapses before he can hit the recall button. And we fade in to find Mal on a bed, on a brightly lit room, with Wash and Zoe talking in the background. Zoe has woken up. She's still injured, but she's awake. And she ordered her shuttle back to Serenity. Sounds like Inara did the same thing around the same time, but Jane tries to take credit. But the family's back together again. A little banged up, but they're home. And like I said, Serenity is still flying. And then we get our final flashback of the salesman talking to Mal, the same voiceover we heard near the start of the episode. He's talking about a totally different ship. Mal's oblivious. He's looking across the shipyard at a certain Firefly class vessel that's parked out in the sands. One of the joys of Firefly is the variety in the show that the episodes are. From episode to episode, it's a different feel. It's not alienating, but if you take JaynesTown, which is quite jovial and fun, action orientated, to Out of Gas, which is very emotional and driven by the characters. So you've got your simple action focus, and then you've got your more complex as I say, story-driven episodes. We've had enough time to get to know the characters now up to this point to really feel this loss of Serenity. Serenity is the 10th member of, well, not of the crew because Serenity's the ship, but she's the 10th character. She might not have a big role in the script, and there's not much dialogue from her, but she's the heart of the reason that everybody is here, and you really feel it with this episode. And it's that strong narrative and those connections that you have that really make you feel this one. There are certain episodes that you just sit back and enjoy with this show. There are other ones that you feel, and this is one you really feel. I have had almost 2 decades of connection with these characters, so it's probably deeper than if you were watching it for the first time. It's stuff like this that really makes the show stand out to me. I know loads of other shows have great casts. I've watched so many of them. There's so many other things that I love. Amazing episodes out there that are just as impactful. Maybe better written, that's subjective. But there's something about Firefly that just connects with me. And more than anything else, this episode embodies just how much I feel that. It's wonderfully written, wonderfully directed, wonderfully acted, and as I've said, the editing is perfect for this episode. As much as I'd have loved to get more than the 1 season we did, I know we got a film, but that's a slightly separate thing. I feel that any more seasons on top of this would just water down the perfection that we have in these 14 episodes. It is a short-lived season, but they're all amazing episodes, much like a Firefly. They only lasted briefly, they burned so bright. I did Google a Firefly's lifespan, so just, trying to make that one work. I've loved rewatching this show, just to review it for YouTube. More of a passion project than anything else, and I know I ramble on in these videos, but I can't help it. I have so much love for this show, like so many others out there. But we're not done yet, because next week we have episode 9, Ariel. We're going to take a look at Ariel next Wednesday. Ariel used to be one of my favourite episodes. When I first watched this series, Ariel was the one that stood out to me. I don't know why. We're talking quite a few years ago. But this episode focuses on Simon and River, as Simon hires the crew to break into a Central Systems medical facility to try and figure out what the Alliance did to his sister. Potential connections to the Serenity film coming up. But that's next week. If you want to see more of me between now and then, keep an eye on my YouTube channel. Videos go up, I'm going to say frequently. They've been a bit spotty recently. I think I said this last week as well. Daylight savings changes in time here in the UK. It just completely messes with me, so I'm still trying to settle down from that. But if you want to find me doing something a little differently, I will be playing Mass Effect 2 over on Twitch. I'll also be playing some Outriders when it releases later this week. Quite a fun, interesting game. Really interesting characters in that, so I'm looking forward to diving into that. Check out my Twitter for when I'm going to be going live, and as always, if you enjoyed this or any of my other content, please do subscribe. It makes a huge difference. Like the video, drop a comment, even if it's just to say hi. I love talking to you guys. You're all fantastic. Thank you for being here. And with that, I'm going to leave this video. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.